It's the polling station you've all been waiting for. What's that? The World Cup of London Boroughs. This reminds me of Krusty the Clown citing his favourite part of the show with Johnny Ward and William Kijani. And of course, William Kijani. Before we get to all of that, if you are struggling politically, what better way to deal with all your ills than talk to Piers Morgan, which may or may not have worked for Keir Starmer. Where is he going with this? Has it helped his prospects going forward? Obviously, hasn't been a great year for the Labour man. How did he get on with Pierce? I have to say, I didn't actually see the interview, but it's good to see Pierce is going well after all the scandals he's had as well. And how are you, by the way?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well, pleased to be here. Piers Morgan is doing the usual Piers Morgan thing of attacking celebrities who happen to be women in the public eye. But he took a break from that to interview Keir Starmer for Life Stories. This was quite a well-hyped interview within political circles over here because of a couple of things. I think because of Starmer's notable struggles, namely the local elections, and also I think the Hartlepool by-election, which might have stung actually even more. There was a positive spin you could put on the local elections to a point. There wasn't really on Hartlepool, more on by-elections down the line. But it was important because he'd been complaining about not having the chance to really cut through to voters. There has been a pandemic. It has put Boris Johnson and the government first and centre stage. They do have these daily press conferences. They are, the one entity that people look to for leadership. So it was important because Starmer's had a lot of criticisms, and many of them are around personality and how he comes across. So it was a pretty big, it was a pretty ballsy move. I personally am one of many people who doesn't think that he is as well advised by his top team as he should be, especially when it comes to PR stuff. But having watched it, I think it went okay for him. In fact, actually, I think it went fairly well for him, bar one moment where he really wasn't willing to answer whether he'd taken drugs. Which I just didn't think came across very well, because he might as well have said yes or no and stuck with either answer.
I've read in interviews that he does have quite a magnetic personality when you meet him in person, but maybe it's difficult for a politician in a pandemic as well for that to come across.
It can be. There is less chance for the sort of campaigning that Corbyn did, where he was out amongst the people, doing an awful lot of speaking in packed halls, giving a good impression of himself to his acolytes who would then go and spread that. Also, I mean, I think I have to say that I think Corbyn is a better public speaker than Starmer. This is taking whatever you think about them out of context, but I think he's a more stirring presence, and part of it is just where Starmer's skills lie. In terms of the modern leadership candidate or the modern leader of a political party, I think we expect, and I'm a young person, so my perspective on this might be very much skewed, but I think we do expect, and we're leaning to more flashy characters who have a bit more of a sing and dance about them, at least on the stump and the campaign trail. So stuff like that, in hindsight, was always going to be a bit difficult for Starmer, which I think is why the Life Story was important, because he hadn't really had a success, I think, as far as a good interview went. I think it was a success for him broadly, because he came across as himself, and he came across as authentic for the emotional parts of the interview. And I don't think he had no real horror shows, which it would have been quite possible to have with Morgan. Of course, apart from the refusal to ask or to answer whether he took drugs 14 times.
Yeah, I am interested in that aspect of it, I think, because, I don't think he's going to lose any major kudos if he said yes, and I don't know if he has or not, or whatever. What did he actually say or not say?
He said something to the effect of, we had a good time at university, which would lead one to think yes. I think, like you say, I don't think the detail is.
He was punting each way, and he's is
Yeah.
great during lectures and so forth.
I don't think the detail of all that is really as important. But we've all heard of what the cabinet themselves have done. It's pretty on record. It's also pretty forgettable anyway. I would think. The interview scored about 1.6 million viewers in the UK. That is not amazing. I wouldn't say it's outstanding, but I wouldn't say it's terrible. I think it's pretty solid for a politician who's leader of the opposition on a Wednesday night, and it doesn't look to have moved the needle much in terms of ratings yet. But it took place, really soon ago. I think it'll be interesting to see if people have any difference of opinion, but I do think that people's idea of Keir Starmer is baked in now.
Betting repercussions, if any, for all of this with Star Sports?
No betting repercussions yet. The polls, by the way, are staying the same. It's the Tories leading by usually double digits. We have odds for Batley and Spen. The Tories are 4-9 to win that. Labour is 6-4. It's 66-1 Bar. The heavy Woollen District Independents are third favourites. Well-known party in that area. George Galloway is running as an independent, something which is, making members of the shadow cabinet rather uneasy. I believe there is a 21% ethnic minority grouping in Batley and Spen, and apparently they're worried that he could dig into it. Also, in a really grim move, which is not something we like to see, Jada Franson of Britain First is standing. Those are the two sort of developments there. Hopefully, Franson is ignored as she was in Scotland. The Labour Party will be hoping Galloway is too. I'd still say the Tories look favourites to take that seat for me. And I think if they do win, or when they do win, I think they will, all the pressure will come back onto Starmer again. We've seen a slight change in his exit dates. He's 11-8 to make it to 2024 or later. He's 7-2 to make it to 2023. The same for next year, and he's 4-1 for this year. I don't think even dutching those three options, I think you could do worse than that. I still struggle to see him making it to the next election, which could be in 2023, according to the Financial Times, who have it on good authority. I think whatever Starmer does, it's going to be quite difficult, save for a polling turnaround and a by-election win, for him to keep the faith and think of people who aren't necessarily the diehards in the party.
Is his best bet just to play it safe and hope that Boris sort of screws up royally, or will that even be enough for Keir Starmer for his political career to go to the next step? Because the Conservatives have a pretty comfortable advantage. Britain is coming out of pandemic reasonably well, and there isn't probably a great deal he can do at the moment.
No, it's always going to be hard, I think, against the vaccine rollout. If there was to be a big delay to the full reopening on June the 21st, that's when it's penciled in for. The next week or so is very important in terms of data for that. Then I think you might see some blowback against the government. Sorry, that's with me, because of that. But that aside, it's difficult to know. I mean, generally speaking, Tory screw-ups that have impacted their own voter base have been the ones to give Labour away in polls. So you've had the schools, the school exams screw-up of last year, the university places screw-up last year. I think the Christmas debacle also did cut through a little bit. But aside from that, generally speaking, many of the big failures of the government haven't really impacted on people who vote for them. or haven't really cut through enough, I don't think. There was, of course, Dominic Cummings and Barnard Castle, but they appear to have politically been forgiven for that. So it's going to be very tough for Starmer to make any inroads, I think.
Yeah, that was only a week ago, and it seems to be almost forgotten already in this fast moving world that we live in. But speaking of fast moving, what about, I mean, Star Sports in terms of fast moving,
Yeah.
innovative bookmakers, World Cup of London Boroughs. Now we've round one upcoming, and then we whittle at a beautiful this beautiful competition of the last. What have we? Many do we have here? 24 odds or so, and then we'll whittle it into 12, so on and so forth. There is betting on this with Star Sports. Here's a tournament for London lovers to get stuck into. Zone brackets, World Cup of London Boroughs, and Lewisham is hot favourite at 3-1.
Yeah, really strong favourites, Lewisham. We've already been through a couple of the round one ties. I believe it's 32 into 2 for the final. Interesting, Croydon from Lambeth, who I believe won last year. So we've already had a bit of a turn up on the books, and it's Kingston versus Havering at the moment before Sutton face Hillingdon, then Camden and Barnet face off. So some pretty big name ties, and really interesting
heavyweights.
Yeah, heavyweights, definitely. Lewisham are very strong favourites, but I would suggest that with these Twitter polls, they're always open and subject to change. I don't necessarily think there is anything such as an easy draw. I would expect that the younger, more fashionable places, well, I should say, when I say younger, I'd say more fashionable places for Twitter users would do quite well.
Yes.
So,
could there be like a public gamble on something here that's well organized and well orchestrated on Twitter when the public latches on to the fact that Star Sports, and I'm not trying to suggest you do anything here, I mean, if you're from Ealing and you're quite savvy, and you have a few mates on WhatsApp, 16s for Ealing, 16s for Hackney, just to name but two that are conveniently both 16-1.
Yeah, that sort of thing can happen in Twitter polls. We've not seen any market wins of the type yet. I think what you will see is after the first round, I think then you'll probably see a bit more market activity. There'll look to be, I think, some more one-sided matchups after that. But in terms of
cut to the chase, William. Cut to the chase. Yeah. Lewisham, bet or lay at 3s. Come on, tell us what you think.
Lay. Right. Always, right. I'd always be looking to take on a short-priced favourite in a Twitter poll anyway. Say for the couple of ones we ran where Jeremy Corbyn was an option. I think it was a year or two back. In a bracket like this, I wouldn't want to be taking a particularly short price about Lewisham. I think sure to go well, but there are about 5 or 6 boroughs who I think have pretty high amounts of Twitter users who I would fancy to do all right. I wouldn't have Camden as big as 14-1s, nor Hackney as big as 16s, and I think actually I'd probably be looking towards them too, maybe for interesting outsider bets. But no, I'm really excited to see how that takes off over the next couple of weeks, and we have the market on site now.
We do indeed, and if you visit the site, you can also you check out the others. It's at Zone One Bracket on Twitter to check out that poll on basically the World Cup of London Boroughs. William, it's been an absolute pleasure as ever. Just revealed to me that you spent last weekend in lovely parts of England and at a point-to-point. So life is resuming.
It is, yeah, it is. Resuming, and actually, to be fair, pretty quickly. There's a lot of debate over whether we'll have this full unlocking on June the 21st. We're lucky we can do an awful lot now in England. You can do an awful lot now that you haven't been able to do for quite a while. So long may it continue as long as everybody else gets their jabs, of which I had my first dose last week.
Oh, wow. What wins the derby?
It was Disarm and it was Pfizer.
Right. I actually asked you what wins the derby, but you responded in the shape of a vaccine, which is interesting.
In terms of what wins the derby, do you know what? I will go with Hurricane Lane. I think he's getting forgotten. I mean, don't get me wrong, I get the arguments over Bolshoi Ballet. I was really impressed with him. I think he suits Epsom more than High Definition. I can see why they split them. There's not very much to recommend against him, but I was quite taken with the way Hurricane Lane won the Dante, and I think he could be pretty big each way. I love Max Sweeney and I love Jim Bolger, and I think that the man is a plain genius. But the ground would worry me more than any other factor. I haven't seen him run a race on what you'd call good summerish ground, and Epsom looks to be getting warm weather, muggy but warm. So yeah, that'd be my view on the derby.
There you have it, the special Ealing Hurricane Lane double to make you rich, rich, rich. I tells you, it obviously has to come off though. William, thanks as ever for your time.
Thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you in the near future. It's possible we might take a break next week from the polling station because, of course, the Euros is starting, but I will be speaking to you, I am sure, over the summer.
Thank you for watching and listening.